Most cults are built around a single figure. Sometimes they're a prophet, a messiah, or just a man at the center of the web. Take the leader away and the whole thing usually collapses into fighting, splinter groups, and whispered arguments about succession. But Kobra is different. In Kobra, the leader is just another layer of skin. Strip him away and the cult doesn't die, it sheds the skin, adapts, and ultimately carries on. By the time of Batman Beyond, Kobra isn't a villain you defeat by stopping one man. It's an idea, a belief system, and a machine designed to survive its own messiah. To help set the scene, it's worth talking about the comic book original version of the cult. The Kobra cult debuted in Kobra #1, published in 1976, and it was led by a man who called himself Kobra. Confusing at first, but it suggests that he had erased the line between the individual and the ideology. He doesn't simply represent Kobra, he is Kobra, and Kobra is him. If Kobra speaks, the cult speaks. If Kobra acts, the cult acts. There's no separation between leader and doctrine, no space for dissent or reinterpretation. He was born Jeffrey Burr, and he was one half of a pair of conjoined twins. After a surgical separation, Jeffrey was stolen by a snake-worshipping cult who faked his death to hide their crime. His twin Jason remained with his family, growing up oblivious to the fate of his brother. Raised in secrecy, Jeffrey, now going by the name Kobra, was trained to be the ultimate leader. The cult instilled in him martial arts mastery, religious devotion, and a ruthless drive for domination. But there was a twist. He maintained a psychic link with his twin brother. If Kobra experienced pain, so did Jason. When Kobra drank lethal snake venom, Jason felt every agonizing moment miles away and completely unaware why. That connection, both terrifying and I suppose tragic, became a defining feature of the character. Kobra was one of Jack Kirby's final creations for DC. Kirby, of course, was already legendary for his work at Marvel, co-creating the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, and much of the Marvel Universe. In creating Kobra, Kirby tapped into the 1970s fascination with secret societies, espionage, and mystical cults, blending them with his signature kinetic art style. Kobra is often compared to Marvel's Hydra, another Serpent-themed organization Kirby helped create, but there is a crucial distinction. Hydra wants to rule the world. Kobra wants to erase it. Where Hydra seeks order through domination, Kobra believes annihilation is the only path to renewal. The difference matters because it places Kobra closer to a Doomsday cult than a criminal syndicate. They don't want to seize the throne, they want to shatter it. And depending on how cynical you are, you may find yourself agreeing with their assessment of the world. It's also why Kobra's influence echoes beyond DC. When similar snake-branded factions appear elsewhere in pop culture, hello G.I. Joe's Kobra, they usually borrow the aesthetics without the nihilism. Despite their creative merits, Kobra never really caught on in the comics though. But they still carved out a unique niche, a cult that was driven by destiny, led by a superhuman trained from birth, whose story combined tragedy, mysticism, and ambition. Kobra, the cult, not the leader, made their first on-screen appearance in the year 2000. When Batman Beyond brought Kobra into its universe, they made some fairly significant changes. Jeffrey Burr's story of abduction and psychic links became a foundation for Zander, a genetically engineered chosen one designed to be the ultimate leader and bringer of global destruction. Rather than being abducted from loving parents, Zander was created in a lab by Kobra's scientists, a living experiment in perfection and destiny. I did a whole video about Zander, Kobra's entitled leader, which I've linked to in the info button in the top right corner, so do check that out if you want to hear more about him. But the quick summary is that while Batman Beyond's take on Kobra is pretty faithful to the comics, there is one key difference. Their Kobra isn't led by a single villain or a shadowy boss. It's a sprawling, futuristic cult fractured into multiple autonomous cells. Each cell operates independently with its own leadership and methods, making the organization resilient. Even if one cell is dismantled, others continue their work. This decentralization gives Kobra a persistent, almost insidious presence in Gotham and beyond, allowing it to adapt to the high-tech, hyper-connected world of the future. Sure, they all would have reported to Zander once he ascended to the throne, but each cell was autonomous and had different members, which worked in their favor after Zander and all of his followers were killed. The cult maintains its obsession with serpents, with snakes representing deception, power, and transformation. But in Batman Beyond, this symbolism becomes literal. The cultists embrace genetic modification, martial training, and ritualistic practices designed to make them stronger, faster, and more dangerous. Their rituals mix science with mysticism, biological enhancements coexist with snake worship, and cult indoctrination. It's a hybrid of old-world fanaticism and futuristic ambition, and it gives the cult a versatility that you don't really see in the comics. Kobra's cells specialise in different forms of operations. Some are focused on scientific experimentation, like the genetic splicing program, aimed at creating superhuman soldiers capable of surviving extremely hot environments, while others operate as militant strike teams trained in hand-to-hand combat and sabotage. This multi-pronged approach ensures the cult is never entirely vulnerable and can escalate its plans at multiple levels simultaneously. The cult also exemplifies the theme of predestination versus agency. While most of the members are indoctrinated and follow orders without question, the ultimate goal is the destruction of humanity. Kobra's ideology in Batman Beyond is consistent with its comic book origins, a combination of snake symbolism, fanatical devotion, and a desire to reshape the world according to the cult's vision. However, the futuristic setting allows for new layers of danger. Dirty bombs, bioengineering, and an intricate network of independent cells create a version of the cult that feels both modern and ominously persistent. While Zander's role is pivotal in the story, the cult's structure, reach, and ideology are what make Kobra a credible threat in the Batman Beyond universe. If any other cult lost their leader, like, say, the League of Shadows, then they'd be scrambling as their members tried to figure out who should replace Ra's al Ghul. It should be Talia, obviously. But there will be members that share Ra's chauvinistic view that a man should lead them. Not so with Kobra though. When Zander dies, the cult carries on as normal. In Batman Beyond's final episode, Unmasked, a smaller cell of Kobra agents learns of a young boy who saw Batman's unmasked face, and they set out to find the boy and learn Batman's secret. Sure, it's a smaller scale scheme than superheating the planet and turning all of their followers into dinosaur splicers, but those cultists were all still loyal to the cause and sought to avenge their fallen chosen one. The Kobra cult's fate after Zander's death is further fleshed out in the Static Shock episode, Future Shock. When Virgil is accidentally flung 50 or so years into the future while visiting Batman, he finds himself coming face to face with the Batman of the future, Terry McGinnis. I'd argue that this episode has the best representation of Kobra, making them seem like a more persistent threat. The episode establishes early on that Kobra is active, organised, and taken seriously by the authorities. Their new leader has been captured by Gotham's police, and the response from the cult is immediate and calculated. Rather than launching a reckless assault, Kobra orchestrates a prisoner exchange, calmly escalating the situation by capturing a hero of their own. The implication is clear. This is a group with resources, patience, and contingency plans, and it took real skill to capture this hero, who Batman describes as the world's greatest hero. What's especially telling is how easily Kobra infiltrates institutions of power. One of their members is a security guard during the transfer of their leader, freeing him mid-escort and declaring "Long live Kobra" as he's arrested. Kobra is an ideology with embedded followers, people willing to sacrifice themselves without hesitation, not just a bunch of basement-dwelling weirdos with a snake fetish. The cult survives because belief, not leadership alone, is the engine driving it. When the Kobra leader returns to their headquarters, we see the cult at full strength. Their base is a massive airborne platform, a striking visual that establishes their vast resources. Zander had operated out of a similar flying base, but that was destroyed when he was killed. So the fact that Kobra has more than one flying base of operations makes it clear that they are not a joke. This is Kobra scaled up for the future, mobile, untouchable, literally above the world they intend to reshape. The members bow in unison, treating their leader less like a man and more like a messiah. The episode also reinforces Kobra's defining trait in Batman Beyond, the fusion of fanaticism and science. The leader speaks casually about doing a little splicing, transforming himself into a human-Kobra hybrid. Far more authentic than the human dinosaur splicers we saw in earlier episodes. Genetic modification has become standard operating procedure, clearly. In this future, Kobra doesn't just worship reptiles, they aspire to become them. Evolution is something they believe they can force, accelerate, and weaponize. Similarly, Kobra plays the long game, planning for decades, anticipating where heroes will be, who they will become, and how best to exploit them. When Batman and the young Static finally confront the Kobra leader, the fight confirms what the cult believes about itself, that they are stronger, faster, and more evolved than everyone else. The leader physically overpowers them with ease, only failing once technology and teamwork level the field. Even in defeat, Kobra still feels dangerous because while their leader may be gone, the cult still exists. What this leaves us with is a clear picture of the cult's identity. Decentralised, fanatical, scientifically enhanced, and deeply patient. patient. So, in summary, Jack Kirby conceived Kobra as a cult that mistook annihilation for salvation, a movement that saw the world's flaws and concluded that wiping the slate clean was the only answer. Batman Beyond took that idea and stripped it of its obvious weakness, the leader. By decentralizing the cult, it removes the need for a messiah entirely. Zander was important, undoubtedly, but he was never essential, and that's how Kobra survives. When one cell falls, another carries on. When a leader dies, someone else eventually steps forward. Kobra doesn't ask who should lead, mostly because their end goal is destruction. So who cares, right? In a world of masked icons and legendary villains, Kobra is much harder to defeat, an ideology that adapts, spreads, and waits. They're a cult that sheds its skin whenever it's threatened, emerging stronger, sometimes stranger, and more convinced than ever that the end of the world isn't a warning, it's a goal. Okay, that's it for this essay. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, tell all your friends about me. You know how YouTube works. If you really liked the video and feel like tossing a buck or two my way, please consider using the thanks button, because every little helps. And if you have really enjoyed my work, you might want to pick up a copy of my book, Rogues Gallery. It features 22 essays on villains from Batman the Animated Series. There's a beautiful cover by Batman the Animated Series background artist John Calmette, a foreword by director Dan Reber, and a moving segment from the late Kevin Conroy sharing his thoughts on life, love, and loss. Plus, an exclusive essay on the Condiment King that will never be made into a video. Rogues Gallery is available worldwide on Amazon, both digitally and in softcover. Finally, channel memberships are just $1.99 a month and give you early access to my essays, custom emojis, and your name featured on my members end screen, which has been rolling for a little while now. Huge thanks to everyone who's already part of this. You've helped to make these videos possible. If you want to see your name up here too, join the channel now. Next time. When I return on Monday, I'll be talking about the character that came in second place in my recent The Batman villain poll, the teenage terror, Poison Ivy. And next Friday, it's been a long time coming, but I want to talk about the formation of the Justice League and their 3-part debut story, Secret Origins. Hope to see you then.